We've already discussed how to declutter your wardrobe and get rid of unused items, but how do you decide what to keep moving forward? This week, we are continuing on the concept of simplifying your wardrobe, and we'll focus more on how to decide what is worth keeping in your wardrobe and how to move forward to create the most effective, minimalist wardrobe possible.
Greetings, one and all, and welcome to the Abundantly Minimal podcast, where we attempt to help you create abundance through living intentionally. My name is Jake. You heard Sarah a few moments ago, and this is episode 11, part 2 of Simplifying Your Wardrobe, where we now are discussing what happens to you after you have eliminated all of the unwanted clothing in your closet, in your dresser, under your bed, and anywhere else where you keep your clothing items.
And since this is part 2, if you are curious about part 1, if you missed that, episode 10, there will be a link in the show notes to episode 10, but that's where you can go to learn a little bit about how you're able to declutter your wardrobe. But we're kind of looking at that second step today when you move forward with this minimal wardrobe.
What types of clothing to keep?
Well, Jake, you're a pro, a perfect example at this because you've really narrowed things down. What kind of clothing have you kept?
Very little of it. But I guess as far as the stuff that I've kept, kind of goes along with what we talked about in that last episode, but I mostly try to, like I said before, I stay away from any of the animal-based types of clothing, so like your wools, your silks, cashmere, isn't cashmere? Yep, all those types. Camel hair, as we talked about Sarah's coat being made of last episode. That was a total accident, really surprising. But mostly I try to go with the plant-based types of clothing, which I guess is primarily cotton, although I am looking into, as far as types of clothing that I do need to replace, looking into hemp and bamboo and those other types of natural fabrics, I guess is what they're called. Trying to limit the amount of synthetic fabrics that I have. I mean, like we talked about last time, I have kind of like a war on polyester, I guess I feel like I'm kind of fighting. Definitely not completely winning. Like, for example, all the ties I have are made out of polyester at this point since I got rid of the silk. But it's not really about, I guess, being perfect, but trying to have as much of the type of clothing that you prefer as possible. I mean, you can't, I guess, win in every single scenario. Some certain types of items, at least from what we found thus far, they're only really available in certain types of fabrics and whatnot. But whenever possible, besides just looking into like the plants, I really try to look at two things, whether or not it's organic, which I guess is first and foremost what I'm looking at. So like not just regular cottons, because those still, as they are, consume lots of water, take up a lot of resources, lots of pesticides go into them oftentimes. Also use other things like, and this is unrelated, I guess, specifically to the cotton, like toxic dyes that aren't really good for our skin or for our health.
Or the health of anyone who's making the products.
Especially that too, which brings me into my other area that I'm looking at, which is I'm finding a little bit tougher to find, but like fair trade certified clothing. I know, at least for me, the first thing that I was familiar with fair trade was like certain types of food, oftentimes related, like I guess chocolate bars is what I first learned about, like fair trade and whatnot. But it also expands to other items as well, such as clothing. So I try as best as possible you can't be perfect all the time, but to meet those two requirements and focusing on trying to have as much of my wardrobe be that as possible. So it's not like I'm just getting rid of everything and like I only have organic or only have fair trade, but even items I already have that are like cotton, like just standard cotton undershirts or cotton t-shirts or sweaters or whatnot, I still hang on to all of those. Whenever it comes time to replace those items, I'm going to go for the higher quality stuff and the fair trade type of stuff. But I mean, as long as I have it and as long as I like it, I mean, it's still comfortable. It still does the job and whatnot. And so I keep it. Or like with the blended stuff, I mean, this is just one of my own silly rules, but I have the rule where it's like as long as it's majority cotton or majority like a plant-based type of material, which like I said, usually ends up being cotton because that's the cane, I guess, of clothing right now, I tend to go ahead and keep it. Again, the idea is that I'll try to upgrade when I feel like it's time to upgrade, but just kind of setting general rules that still give me flexibility. But again, like I don't really want to have like the total synthetic stuff or whatnot. And I know everybody's different as far as what they prefer. And there's certain types of clothing that are kind of tough not to do that with. Like I've noticed like your workout type of shorts almost always are like polyester. That's just the material that they are because with the polyester, they don't absorb water, I guess,
So
which
they
I mean,
stay dry.
yeah, so they don't get as wet as like, of course, cotton like absorbs lots and lots of water. But
one thing I think to just interject, listening to you describe it, I mean, it sounds pretty awesome what you're doing. It does sound maybe a little bit more ambitious than some people might think. They're like, well, if that's what being a minimalist is with my wardrobe, then I'm not interested. That's totally fine. I think that, well, this is what works for Jake. I think that doesn't mean that if you don't want to go on this path or you're not able to fully go on this path here, that's fine. It's your ultimate own clothing journey. I think when we look at any of these kind of things, it's not about perfection, but looking at the progress that we make.
I mean, that's the whole idea. I mean, you're not going to be perfect. I mean, like I think I've said in an earlier episode, I have perfectionistic tendencies, which are not healthy a lot of the time. But just the idea of it's always a journey. You're always going to try to improve and get better. And I mean, that's just my values. So that's what I use as far as like, it's helped me limit the amount of stuff I can have because of the majority of stuff out there doesn't align with what I'm looking for. It makes it pretty easy to resist. Like when you go to a store and you see something like, oh, I want to get that. So it's kind of like a survival mechanism, I think, for me also, in addition to just the ethical stuff, in order to hold myself like to a certain amount of items. It's kind of what the vegan thing, we talked about. I don't know if we have talked about that really with food yet, but it helps, limit the kinds of bad stuff that you can have because you have these parameters or these rules that you follow. But yeah, my rules aren't what everybody, I'm sure, wants to follow. Everyone's got to find their own balance for themselves.
Here's a more generic approach. Keep the stuff that makes you feel awesome or that makes you look good. Looking and feeling good will bring about confidence in yourself. And when you're confident, you're much more likely, I think, to be in a better mood and accomplish more, maybe be seen more positively by others. It's really important, and a lot of people struggle with this. I know especially I've gone through phases where if I was maybe at a higher weight in my life, I might feel less confident. But certain clothing items, and you know it, because if you put on an outfit and you look good, you feel good. So thinking about just even what feels good and what looks good. And I mean, trying to ideally find a happy medium. So, what you're wearing feels good and looks good. There are certain things that look good, but they feel terrible. So, I mean, that's something to think about if it's actually worth that. And then also there are some things that, feel good and maybe don't look that good. Some of my pajamas might fit that category, but they're for my pajamas, so I don't really care. Sometimes I honestly just don't really care anyway. Like with work, I'll just wear whatever, looks dressy enough, but is really just the comfiest thing possible. But regardless, go on, try on your things, take a look in the mirror, put some fun music on, and see how you feel. Because if there's something that doesn't make you feel good, that item should be dead to you. You can you can get rid of that if it's not helping you. Because I think ultimately, maybe Jake, you disagree with me, but I think being confident, if you look good and you feel good in something, I feel like that's what can bring about confidence in your appearance.
No, I don't encourage or advocate confidence. You should always feel bad about yourself.
All right.
I'm kidding. No,
I
that's
know.
important. It is. It is. I mean, that's part of the rule too, I guess, that you have to follow. As if it doesn't make you feel good, then, I mean, that's what I'm talking about with the clothes that, like, I always skipped over at the beginning, like last episode. I didn't feel good in those clothes, but, you know, you don't have to hold on to it just because it still, you know, objectively looks good. It's all about what actually suits you. Everything that you hold on to, I mean, it should serve a purpose and not make you feel bad or not make you feel worse about yourself. Because, yeah, of course, confidence is important. We've only got one life. We might as well feel good about it, right?
Kind of going along with the weight related thing, one thing that I've experienced is that my weight has changed over time, and I have a range of clothing that has fit me during different phases of that. Some things have fit throughout the whole phase, other things have not. And currently, I still have kind of held on to a lot of these items. I hinted in the last episode, once I have, like, in the past 2.5 years, I've been losing weight, and it's been very gradually. But if there were items that were too big for me, I have gotten rid of those. But I'm still holding on to some of those items that are pretty, that I used to wear even in high school or early college. And I think for me, some of those items I do hold on to because I am very hopeful and I'm kind of close with where I think I can, you know, as I keep eating healthfully and over time, you know, gradually losing weight, I'm optimistic I'll be able to fit into again. But I think this is important. You have to kind of be real with yourself about, is it going to happen? And even if it does happen, will it look good? Will it give you the confident vibes that you are looking for? And that's kind of helped me, because after a while, certain things like, well, technically this would fit me, but I mean, this is from 7 years ago, you know, if a lot has changed since that point. So thinking about that can be really helpful too, as you're going about, like, well, should I hold on to this stuff? For some of you, maybe if you're a little bit older than Jake and I are, and you've got like decades worth of old clothing, that might be something to evaluate if, you know, the trends have majorly changed over time. And really, I think the best way to see where you're at with things is to try stuff on. And you know, if something's, you know, snug but, you know, somewhat manageable, or if there's like no way. That's where I've been on a few things.
If you have to do the pants dance, you know it's time.
I'm not sure I've done the pants dance many a time, and I don't know if that's a sure indicator.
Well, you just like dancing. I mean,
I do like dancing.
But I mean,
we digress.
Whatever works for you, I guess, is really what we're trying to say. Do you have any tips or tricks, Sarah, for additional, I guess, info about dealing with clothes and minimalizing them?
So how about you talk about the weekly rule?
Weekly rule. I think we should have a song intro for that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are you gonna sing the song?
Mm-hmm. I just did. But the weekly rule. I like rules. They keep me grounded to make sure that I hold myself accountable. Because if I don't have rules, I just kind of fall apart like jelly or something. It just doesn't work out. So my weekly rule that's really helped me, like, put a control on the amount of clothing that I have for the last several months. Basically, I tried to do it now where, as far as laundry goes, I have about 2 weeks, well, exactly, I think 2 weeks worth of boxers or underwear or boxer briefs, whatever it is. For me, it's, well, you don't need to know that. That's too much information. But
Thongs. I'm just kidding.
Yep, all the way.
That'd be terrible.
Uncomfortable too. Anyway, 2 weeks worth of underwear, and then I've got about that same amount then for socks, and I have that same amount for undershirts. And because if you go beyond, I think, 2 weeks of doing laundry, to me, it feels like that I have too much stuff. Because, I mean, there was like, I remember when we first moved into this place, and part of it also was that we didn't have a washer and dryer yet. But we went like at least over a month without like washing anything. Like we had like a month's worth of clothes in like packed in these laundry baskets that we
And
have.
we weren't even being gross and like wearing things over and over and over again. Like
we were just wearing things one time, and like we had a month's worth of stuff. So this weeks worth, I guess, of stuff. I'm talking about included items that you've worn several times. Like last episode, we mentioned jeans, and like even the 2 weeks still may not even wash the jeans. Just keep them for like a month or something like that before washing them, unless like you are a sloppy eater like me and you got food all over them. But then you might want to wash them. But like with the undershirts, what I do now, I think I have like single digits, I'm pretty sure. I can't tell you an exact number off the top of my head, but I wear each of them. I used to wear them like once when I guess for work or wintertime when you need that extra layer. Now I wear each one twice before I put it in the wash. Might be able to go 3 times. I guess I haven't got that rebellious yet, but I'm doing twice on each of those. So that takes me into 2 weeks.
And one comment just to make regarding that, especially if there are Americans listening, which I think our stats suggest that most of you are, what's interesting, and you might not necessarily realize this if you don't travel much outside the U.S. or talk to people from various countries, but what's interesting is that in the U.S. in general, there seems to be like a higher standard of cleanliness, or like that cleanliness is more desired, and it's not necessarily, that other places are dirty. That's not what I'm trying to say, but I guess there's almost an extreme degree of cleanliness that people are looking for. And so, well, there's definitely, situations where obviously you don't want to get into an area that's just like not doing any cleanliness. In the US in general, we over clean things. Clothing, really, our clothing does not have to, with the exception maybe like underwear and some stuff like that, our clothing does not need to be washed every single time. Most days, unless you're in a field where you're doing a lot of physical work, most days I'm guessing you're probably not actually like really sweating through your clothing, getting it really gross that it needs to be washed every time. And so you can wear your clothes more than once between washes. Again, it's not something that people necessarily understand in the U.S., I think, but
it's just not a value that's taught to you. You're taught that like the over cleaning thing, like you said.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's also, it doesn't here. Let's go on a rant about the advertisement industry, but we're taught with different cleaning products to use them more often, because the more laundry you're doing, the more detergent you're going to need, the more profit those companies are going to make. So it's like it would hurt them to have the truth get out. So they're going to keep pushing the idea that we always have to be washing it. But ultimately, it's going to wear your stuff out. Obviously, if your stuff is smelly or dirty or gross, yeah, wash it. But chances are, most of the time, it's not really that after just one wear. So I feel like we at least go 2 times wearing, maybe 3 times wearing something, if it is like a shirt or something.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say, like maybe like a few times per shirt, like sweaters, since that's what's got the undershirts under them. I usually give those like 4 times that I wear them before I wash them. And then jeans, it seems like an infinite number of times. Like I said, unless they're like super dirty or something, like because of, working outside or, dinner table malfunctions or whatever it might be. The nice thing is that you have a lot less to wash. You have a lot less to put in the dryer. You have a lot less than to go ahead and fold or hang up, or it doesn't take things as long to dry if you got a small dryer like us, and it doesn't really work the best. But it makes everything easier when you just have less. And then plus then you're wearing the clothing that makes you feel more confident, and that is your favorites more times. Then you're able to get more use out of it. And washing clothes in some cases, like a lot of cases, that's what ends up ruining them faster.
Sorry. For those of you who obviously can't see what's going on, while Jake was talking, I got like the worst like pins and needles kind of feeling like when my foot fell asleep. But I swear, this is the worst it's ever been. Like, it's not just my foot, but like my whole leg.
You
I
need to
feel
take
like
a walk.
Fell asleep.
You need to take a stretch.
Yeah. Here, well, I'm going to take a quick walk. How about you talk about a few tips and tricks?
Tips and tricks. All right. Try not to laugh at Sarah this whole time while she's moving around here. But just a couple last tips and tricks with this whole thing that we kind of follow. I know one thing that I do is like those types of reversible items are pretty handy to have around if you can, that like can serve multiple functions or multiple colors or patterns or whatever. I guess some of the big ones would be like belts. I've got like a reversible belt, so I don't think it's something that a lot of people do, but why carry a black belt and a brown belt unless you know karate, when you could just have a reversible one that serves both functions. Although I don't actually know if brown belts are a thing in karate. I'd have to check on that. But in any case, or comforters, I know that's, I guess, not technically clothing, but clothing for your bed, I suppose. If you can have, like, if you like to have the reversible patterns, we don't really care about that. But if you like to have more spice to your life, that's something else that you could do as well. And like buying the clothes, I know we talked a lot about trying to buy ethical. At least that's something that I try to do. Buying online tends to be where you can find a lot more of those ethical brands versus the big retailers that you go to their stores, like, and brick and mortar stores, I guess. Most of their clothing is usually definitely not going to be organic from what I've seen. As far as I've seen, usually not fair trade or any of that. I mean, still nice clothing, but oftentimes the clothing that you're able to get for like those cheaper prices, part of it is because the ethics behind making them wasn't really that good. And then the people who made them weren't paid the best wage. The materials used to make them weren't the highest quality. And so there's a lot of good websites online that sell organic and good types of clothing that we've used, like a few, and just naming them not because they're telling us to. Nobody's going to be telling us or paying us anything. But Prana was a company that we've gone to that we've really liked what they are selling. Patagonia also has really good sustainable type of clothing. And there's honestly a ton more out there. If you just, I mean, I think I've looked at least like 20. Pact is another one. Pact is one that really, really enjoy. Good clothing and organic cotton and whatnot. So just being mindful of those resources that exist out there, like it just takes maybe a little bit more work. But then, I mean, the stuff that I think we've received or that we've bought and purchased from these guys, we've really enjoyed. And again, not saying this because anybody is telling us we need to say this. We're definitely by no means at that point. But just stuff that we've gotten value out of that we think some of you might get value out of as well. And my last thing before I will stop yakking away, I mentioned cork in the last episode, I think. And cork is another like good sustainable or more sustainable resource coming from tree bark. And it's a great alternative to leather. I know like some items made out of leather, like belts and shoes, it sometimes seems like, well, what else can I get these things made out of that's going to hold up? Or wallets would be another one. Again, I guess not clothing, it's accessory, but kind of related. But cork is actually a really, really durable material that, I mean, I've had this belt and this wallet made out of cork for like the last 3 months, I would say, 2 to 3 months. Both have held up really well. I really, really like them, and it didn't involve any animal cruelty in making them. So something to feel better about. I mean, there are definitely drawbacks, I'm sure, like the dyes and whatnot. Can't get 100% on everything, but for what I was looking for, it definitely has been pretty awesome. So if you're looking for an alternative to that, I'm not sure about shoes. I was looked into shoes, and it seems like it's like cork leather blends or hybrids or whatnot, but it seems to be a material that is gaining popularity with certain types of clothing, and it looks pretty cool to see. Like I think,
for sure,
a belt made out of cork. It stands out in a good way, not like a horrible I want to hide my belt sort of way. Which I guess unless you're having a tucked in shirt, your belt's kind of hidden anyway. But
anyway, I have a few more tips and tricks to add. Thanks for covering for me while I walked off.
Oh, no problem. You better now?
My foot. I am much better, thank you. Side note, this is unrelated, but sometimes it's almost a good reminder, or it's almost nice to be uncomfortable for certain moments, because when it's gone, then it just feels so good, Like after you've been sick for a while, I mean, it sucks being sick, but after you've been sick for a while and then you're better, it's like you have a whole new lease on life. You're ready to take on the world. Right now, my foot and leg feel awesome. So it bodes well for working out later.
Yeah.
But anyway, as far as some of the tips and tricks I have for a more minimalist wardrobe, The capsule wardrobe concept is something to look into. I'll probably be making a video later on about items to put in a capsule wardrobe. But basically the idea there is thinking about how, a certain selection of items that you can wear in different combinations. So it appears that you have more items and more variety in your wardrobe than you actually do. So that could be something to look into. Sharing clothing with friends or family could be cool. Obviously, I know it doesn't always make it super easy, but especially among friends, if you are similar body structures and similar tastes in clothing, that can be a great way to increase the options of things that you can wear while not having to bring as much into your wardrobe. Buying used, if you are going to buy clothing, is another way to make things more ethical because you're not creating anything new like any other waste or byproducts. If you're looking for space-saving solutions, I think it can be helpful to roll your clothes if it's in a dresser situation. But I think overall, despite the space saving, like even if you are able to hack your room so it's all organized and you don't have to get rid of anything, I think what's really a good way to think about it is to imagine all of your drawers, like you've got things tucked away in drawers, but the drawers are so stuffed that first of all, it's a pain when you open it up because it gets stuck and you have to like finagle things around a little bit, but also that it's tough for you to find things within the drawer. I think part of why minimalism is even better than organization is because it's much easier to maintain and keep organized sometimes than maybe organizing something or cleaning something is, and then things get out of order over time. If you can visualize how much easier it is and just how much less stress or mental energy there is if you compare a drawer that's like overstuffed with clothing compared to, let's say there's a drawer that has 8 shirts in it that are kind of like rolled up or folded up. It's going to be so much easier to get the shirt you want in the drawer that just has the 8 shirts in it than being packed to the brim with shirts. So that's just a way to think about it, I think, too. The outcome here, obviously, you don't want to overstuff any of your things because that ultimately doesn't really serve you well.
And if you have less clothes, you could arguably not even require the bigger dresser that has more space that you feel like you need to fill up.
Yeah. But one thing that's cool, too, to also help us be in more of a minimal mindset, if you have space in your drawers that doesn't overstuff things, feel free to use that space that's kind of tucked away. So then overall, your mind or your eyes are not seeing all that stuff like sitting out on the counter or the dresser. That's a way to have a more minimal mindset when you're in a certain room, even if you weren't able to get rid of certain items. And then finally, I think one just important thing to address as far as the why to do this, why to continue minimalizing your wardrobe. The fewer choices we have, we tend to be happier overall. You don't have to spend as much time trying to make decisions. It's ultimately called the paradox of choice, I believe is the concept. And so if you can reduce the number of choices you have, there probably are going to be things that you love compared to before you had some things you loved, some things you didn't. And it makes it a lot quicker to make those decisions since you love it all and there's only, 20 choices compared to the 50 choices you used to have or something like that. So that's, I think, one of the best benefits.
Yeah, because then if you only have like 3 choices, there's a better chance that you feel more comfortable with the one that you made than versus if you had the 50, like you said. And then you've got 49 other choices. Like, man, there's 49 other directions I could have went with this. I don't know if I made the right choice. So it's like, when you're taking like a test or something, not to relate it to test taking of all things, but you have a greater chance of success with the less choices that you have.
That's
applying
true.
it here to your wardrobe now, real world test taking, but not really.
All right. Well, I think that kind of wraps it up. Hopefully some of these tips have resonated with you. Feel free to subscribe to our podcast. Give us a rating or review if you like. That really helps us out, especially since we're still a fairly new podcast.
In our infancy.
Okay, that's not going to really help our help our numbers.
You're right. We're more toddler right now.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. You can check out more details on the show notes on this page at abundantlyminimal.com.
We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.